Hey, what's going on, everybody? Today is March 22nd, and you're watching the Daily AI Show live. And today is our 2-week wrap-up show. It's the What Did We Just Say About AI? We said a lot of things about AI over the last 2 weeks, and this is our opportunity to just pause without going into necessarily new topics and circle back to some of the things that we really loved. We often run out of time on our shows, and we don't get to deep dive as much as we want. Of course, there's always more news and things like that. So today we got Jyunmi, Andy, Beth, and I'm Brian. And I want to kind of dig in because we talked about all sorts of stuff. I was looking back over our last 2 weeks. We talked everything about malware in the hype cycle yesterday. But last week we were talking about tourism and all the news and all the latest video advancements. We did a deep dive into the script. So we've covered all sorts of stuff in the last 2 weeks. I don't know, Beth, what was the one that kind of stood out as far as the last 2 weeks of shows for you?
I'm super interested in the robotics show just because I am seeing those. I'm seeing conversation about them become more mainstream. And also it does seem to be a polarizing topic. Right. So people sort of go automatically toward militarization is going to be a huge problem, or it's going to take all our jobs. Right. But I personally did some looking after I think one of you said, well, it's definitely going to be the price of a car, and commercial grade robots are a really, really nice car. That's their price. But I did find that Unitree, which is a Chinese company, full disclosure, I'm guessing there's a lot of data being collected by your robot. But the price range was somewhere between 1,500 and 5,000, and that seemed in line with the Apple Vision Pro. This is a consumer grade for people who have those kind of dollars hanging out.
I mean, that's kind of a car, right? I mean, any of your I hate to even say it because I feel old, but any of your mid-range cars are probably 50,000 now, and then new obviously, right. and then I only know this because I remember my wife looking it up. It was the first time we had seen a Hummer EV on our local roads here. Kind of like seeing a cyber truck go by you for the first time. You're like, oh, I don't live in California, so we don't see that a whole lot in Florida. There's one, out in the wild or whatever. So anyway, we had seen the Hummer, and she's like, that's got to be an expensive truck. I was like, that's an insanely expensive truck, which kicked off her looking it up. And I don't remember the exact numbers, but I want to say a base model was 120,000. It was something like that. A Ford F-150 Lightning, the EV version of that, is going towards those numbers or whatever. So yeah, could you have a robot? Could you have a Rosie from the Jetsons in your home for the price of a car?
So these
from China?
These were the quadrupeds, right? The dog robots, or we look at them as, they're headless dogs, but this isn't going better. I think they're very exciting, but the consumer grade is much smaller. So it's like toy poodle versus slightly small horse down at your local police station, or what they're using in these other things. But I also think it's just really interesting in terms of the value that you can get out of something that has that during its charged time, it does not have human weight limitations, right? I just find that really interesting.
One thing we did, well, first of all, you know what, before I go into that, let me say, hey, Cindy, good morning. Happy Friday to you too as well. And happy Friday, and happy to see you. And I were just catching up on Slack. So happy to see Anne take some time out of her busy day. Anne's got some really cool things going on. So we'll make sure we get caught up with her and maybe bring her on as a guest, because she's got some cool initiatives going on, and she has an amazing Saturday group that's growing big time. So we'll get more information on that as well. But yeah, definitely go follow Anne for AI.
There's a very exciting thing coming up tomorrow. It's not us, it's her stuff, but
for sure.
I have a ticket.
Go check out Ann on LinkedIn, and all the great stuff will be there for sure. And of course, aloha to Jen. Aloha, beautiful people. I clearly not talking to me, but thank you, Jen. I'll take it anyway. I'll assume you're talking to all the other wonderful people on the show. But thanks, guys, for all hanging out with us on Friday. Okay, so what I was going to say really quick, Beth, is one thing we didn't talk about that show, and I didn't really think about it till now, is we really did talk about the figure robots, the Optimus robots but we really didn't actually dive at all into AI robots, which really would be like home companion, like consumer. Like what I'm thinking of is the pet companion that looks exactly like a dog. In fact, it looks like it's breathing like a dog. Right now, the things that I'm seeing out there is like it's kind of like a lap dog. It's just gonna sit there, and to me, it definitely looks like a tool. I don't know if that's the right word for it, a resource for anxiety, for people with PTSD, for people who are lonely. And I think, oh my goodness, this is going to be amazing because like there's just something to that, right? And then, but they're going to get smarter. They're going to be able to start moving around. They're going to be able to walk from room to room. They're going to be able to hop on the bed and sleep at the foot of your bed. This is coming from somebody who doesn't own any pets and never has, but I see the super value in that. I always talk about this. Like my daughter would be a prime candidate for a AI robot of that level. Are we there today? No. Would it be affordable even if it was, and there was this dog walking around? No. But is it cool? Is it coming? I think so. And we didn't really talk about that on that show. I don't know what you guys think.
Well, as long as it doesn't, it doesn't act like a Tamagotchi. Deep cut for all of you out there. I think, I think there might be a long-term benefit. Price to return ratio, anyways.
Yeah, and Jen is saying my pet gets in bed with me. This gives me fire hazard concerns. Yeah, maybe they need to also be built-in fire suppression, automatic shut off if the batteries overheat. Fair point on that. I drive a Chevy Bolt, so I got a Bolt after the battery fire hazards. But if you owned a Bolt in the last few years, they were straight up telling you don't park them in parking garages. So I get you. Look, batteries are a problem. So, okay. So we talked about robots. Anybody else have? Welcome, by the way, Carl. Carl just joined us. Let me follow up on this really too, because Ann said, come to the tech showcase tomorrow. Cassidy, Bland, Obsidian, Wowzer, and a stealthier one too. Awesome. So go check out Ann's deal online or on LinkedIn so you can get all the details about that. Highly recommend it. Carl, we're just talking about all this stuff over the last couple of weeks. We're saying some of the topics. Are any of these shows over the last 2 weeks that like sort of stood out for you, or any like that you're like, oh man, that was interesting, or I want to dive more into that kind of stuff?
It's actually a news story that I read this morning that expands on. Did you already cover Devon?
Yeah, the new show.
We've covered it previously, but on this show
we haven't done a deep dive episode.
We haven't done a deep dive on Devon yet. So
we will though. Maybe next week.
So I saw this morning an article from the Visual Studio on the Microsoft. I think it's a Microsoft paper. I just got to look at. So there's a newsletter that I follow. It's called Superpower Daily, and today's daily was about what was it called? Microsoft paper. The article reads: Microsoft paper turns fully autonomous AI framework, turning devs into supervisors. So this is on the Visual Studio magazine, where it's called AutoDev, and it completely automates software development with an autonomous AI agent that does all the work themselves, turning developers into supervisors. So this is from Microsoft, a Microsoft paper. And in the article, it was that they were pretty, the presentation has stirred up a lot of developer angst on Hacker News and elsewhere. So, so I think to me, this is part of the exciting points here is the agents aspect of this, right? If as we get better and better large language models that reason better, then yes, because the agents right now, quoting Sam Altman, they kind of suck. They work kind of time. they break, they kind of do the stuff, but they break. But I think with high reasoning, you're able to do a lot more, probably still human supervision, but instead of 60%, maybe 80, 90%. So that's where, and then there's another one, the O1 Lite, where you can control your computer with just your voice. That was
Carl is
cool.
talking about what we didn't talk about in the last 2 weeks.
Sorry.
Right.
But that's the thing, is like all these things point right back to Devin and the agents and
Yep.
how we can control everything in a way that's different than how we're controlling it now. Mouse, keyboard. It's just, to me, it's a different way to interact with information.
Yeah, and I think we'll definitely, like, agents is definitely going to come up in a very soon full show. I know it is, and honestly, there's been, like, it seems like it's popping up a lot more. And I'll give a shout out to the Neuron newsletter. It's an AI newsletter if you want to check it out. And actually made a post, but I have it scheduled for going out later today. But they had a really good quote in here. They're talking about, it's all about agents, so I highly recommend going to check out that newsletter today. But it's like, AI that can reason, handle higher order goals, come up with action plans, etc. Then it gives an example, and then it gives the quote that I really loved. And the example is, AI today is a specific task. So write a blog post about X while following these guidelines. The X meaning the topic, right? Agents of tomorrow, more general goals. Draft a week's worth of content based on the latest news in AI. Right? A little bit more broad, a little bit more vague, yet the AI, we assume the AI agents will be able to take that, understand the context, the meaning, the subtleties behind it, the human way of speaking and interacting, and actually produce really good content. And this is the quote I like that I quoted them on for a post later today. It said, in other words, if today's chatbots are like rear view cameras on a car, agents are like automatic parallel parking. I just thought that was a really cool quote. I just thought, yeah, that's a good way of looking at that. So I'm with you. And maybe the agent / Devin will be all one show and topic. I don't know that we have that, but that sounds like something we definitely want to dive a whole lot more into, for sure. Very soon.
Yeah, I have a couple things to add on the agentifying of large language models. There's a website, deeplearning.ai, which is Andrew, I'm not sure how to say his last name. But they did some research which took GPT 3.5 and GPT 4 and ran it against a coding benchmark. So this is like Devin, writing code on, and there's a human eval coding benchmark. Not familiar with it, but what they did was they first did coding instructions, gave instructions to each of those two models as a zero-shot prompt, no examples, no agentified instructions. And from our discussions on this show about meta prompting, that meta prompting is the whole concept of giving the language model itself instructions to generate agents or subroutines, as I called them, that will then combine in order to pursue a goal. So you give it the goal and you give it permission and examples about how to create these subset, routines or tasks. And that's like an agent, right? An agent is kind of having that, but with instructions. Well, so they took this coding benchmark and they did it in zero shot, and GPT 3.5 came up at around 48% correct. And GPT-4 was better at 67%. But when they gave it instructions that made it like a multi-agent operation, as I was describing, GPT-5 came out at 97%.
Did you say GPT-5?
We don't have GPT-5 yet.
I did say GPT-5, but I didn't mean that. I meant GPT-4 Turbo, and then even this modest little GPT 3.5 increased dramatically up to the level of about 75%. So that just shows you the power. The language models themselves don't apparently need a whole lot of additional training as long as you give it the right kind of agent-oriented instruction. At least, when they've already had extensive instruction tuning.
So this relates to our hype show yesterday. Do you want to finish? Sorry, I cut you off.
No, that's good. Go ahead.
this relates to our hype show yesterday in that this is the sort of thing that can be talked about as in like, oh my God, the abilities are amazing. Our entire world is changing before our very eyes. And then somebody gets into it and is like, I'm not entirely sure how you got excited about this, because there is a big step up to be able to take advantage of these pieces that are being researched and understood. But it does indicate that like the sea change is happening. Like we're watching the moon pull the tide over just slightly. It hasn't like changed everything in that direction, but it is definitely coming. And I agree. I think that I read that article too. I thought that was really, really exciting.
Yeah,
Go
from that
follow
article,
Andrew Ng on
yeah, yeah, you saw it on X, and it's also posted on his website, deeplearning.ai, where you can go find it. Here's a really nice four-member description of the different layers of agentifying you can do with prompts, and also with tuning. But here's the first one is reflection, and we've played with this before, which is think about this carefully. Reflect on what you're doing, think step by step, that kind of thing.
Right.
Then examine your own work to come up with ways to improve it. That's the reflection model of giving it agent-like instructions. The next one is to give it tools. LLMs given tools such as web search or code execution, and then it's invited to use those tools in some way collectively to achieve the objective. And then the third level is planning. The LLM is instructed to come up with and execute a multi-step plan to achieve a goal. Like giving it, the outline of a series of steps that would lead to the objective. And then there's the sort of the holy grail, I think, which is multi-agent collaboration, as is described in the whole concept of metaprompting. More than one agent work together, splitting up the tasks, discussing and debating ideas amongst themselves to come up with better solutions than a single agent would.
And this is system 2 stuff, Carl. System 2 of what?
System
right?
Thinking. Yeah.
System 2 thinking?
Yeah. You know what we can Andy just got me thinking about this post I saw about. So I was super excited when we saw Bloomberg train their own model, something, like maybe a year ago. And it's like, oh, Bloomberg's training their own financial model. And I think they were using 3.5 or whatever large language or whatever model they were using. But when they tested it against Turbo did better. So my question is, fine tuning. Do you need to fine tune as the models grow better reasoning, better and better and better and better? Yes, you probably still need to feed it a little bit of your information, but if all the millions of dollars that Bloomberg spent to train their own model, Turbo comes out, whatever comes out and just beats it, then what does that mean? Like, I always thought it's like, oh, there was a train of thought that would be the future, is that every single company would have their own model to train and so on. But I'm not quite sure, because as we connect the agents into better trained models, do you necessarily need to do that with things like ChatGPT?
Let's suppose that Bloomberg, instead of using fine tuning of a large language model, suppose they created an agent that was given access to the web and all of Bloomberg's data, right? Then it could, in effect, be given instructions to go out and learn what it can and to solve certain problems that are presented to it. And that would be the example as you described it would be, let's just take GPT-5 and we'll agentify it and then give it to Bloomberg and let it compete with the Bloomberg LLM. There's a related thing I just wanted to throw out here, which is all about this question of, should you train the AI, or, are the AI models going to become so sophisticated there's no point in fine tuning anymore? Well, Stanford researchers developed this method of training AI models called Quiet Star, which enables AI.
We're jumping back to a ton of shows in the past. Quiet Star, like Q-Star.
So what that does is it enables the AI models, once they've been trained this way, to generate an inner monologue or think before responding. So specifically, it's inviting the AI to generate parallel thoughts or rationales before answering a prompt, and then combine those parallel thoughts into some resolution that is delivered as the response. So we've done this before. I'm sure all of us have done while we've been practicing prompting. You've given instructions like that where, okay, give me 3 different possible outcomes here, and then evaluate those 3, and then give me the response that you think is the best. Quiet Star does it with training. So, it's trained with examples and and that's basically all that's happening. You could put this into the context window, the set of examples, and by the way, the Claude meta prompt, which is available now on a Google Doc that you can go and copy, is just this sort of thing. It's like creating a generalized meta agent structure for your prompt, just for the purpose of writing a prompt. So that's fascinating.
And we did talk about that too, right? Was about like what Claude was explaining about using Haiku, their lightest, fastest model, to do evaluations. We talked about that in the malware episode a couple of days ago. And in that conversation, that was one of the things they did about the harmlessness was the word they used in terms of these prompts going out and using models to check prompts before they go out. And just before maybe we move off this topic, it does remind me what Rachel Woods from the AI Exchange said months and months and months ago, which was at the time, there was a lot of hype at that time about fine-tuning models. And her answer, I think, still holds true today, which is before you go worrying about fine-tuning models, go spend as much time until you've exhausted it on making your prompts better. And if you think about it, that whether it's Haiku helping you get there, whether there's a prompt to help a prompt get there, or Prompt Perfect back with the plugins back in the day, or whatever it is, that still holds true, which is that, and Carl, you're sort of saying too, like technology is coming towards us in a way that's basically saying, like, if you can get your prompts to a place where you can get other prompts to help you write better prompts, then that will probably solve for fine tuning. And my small example of this, use case of this was I was messing around with Gemini 1.5. That has been highs and lows for me. It's like somebody doing a trick shot and saying, "Did you just see that?" And you'll never be able to reproduce it again. I don't care how many times you try. Like I find that a lot. Like it's got moments of brilliance. I was saying that on a conversation last night with our good mutual friend Tyler. I was like, there's moments of brilliance, and then there's just moments of just sheer stupidity with it, But there's glimmers, and the one I had was I gave it the background knowledge document to something I've been using in a custom GPT, but I did not give it what we could consider to be a bit of a prompt engineering, a fine tuning, if you want, of instructions that I had put in the custom GPT. And I thought, I wonder if it needs this to get the same result. And like I said, not every time, but there was one time where it was that moment or flash of brilliance where it clearly understood the job and it didn't need any of my instructions from the custom GPT, of which there are documents of instructions on how to do this correctly for the custom GPT. And Gemini 1.5 did not need it to come up with the same comparable results. I think that's telling.
Something that Ethan Mollick talked about when he had access, right? He was like, if you engage in this and don't at some point walk away and wonder what you just experienced, right? Is there a ghost in the machine? What just happened? But it does not happen consistently enough that your whole world is rocked and the tides have changed and all of that. Yeah.
Think about like where we've come since the beginning, where the crazy prompt engineering $350,000 a year job, which is I thought that was hilarious because it didn't make any sense. But with the reasoning, like what Andy talked about today about the way that you train your models, Q star, what you just talked about, Brian, to me, again, reasoning will get better. It'll understand you in a way that you may not need to provide as much context as we're doing now for very complex tasks. It's like you can kind of start seeing it, or the agent comes in and it's like you do this and it kind of does it for you. You just have to give a better, like, just a nuanced instruction to an agent. So I was like, think, and I think going back to what Altman said in December, I think he was talking to somebody. He's like, you got to prepare your businesses for GPT-5 and above. And I was like, how would you prepare for that? Even my business partner was like, how would we prepare for a world? But you're kind of starting to see it. You're kind of starting to see, well, there's agents coming, higher reasoning. What does that mean for a business? And you start kind of putting the pieces just a little bit together. You don't see the full piece, but like, how will you run a business when you have that? How will you create your go to market strategies? How will you create your operations when you have these components, that you have these abilities, even though a lot of people aren't even at the level that we're talking about now?
I'll just add to that really quick. It's my answer every time, which is, how do you prepare? Get your house in order today. And I always go back to the data, because let's just assume that these agents exist tomorrow. I mean, they're coming, right? And while the business sleeps from 5 p.m. to 9 a.m., just on a general schedule, we'll use a general business. While it sleeps, you've got these agents that go off. They grab all the conversations from Slack, and they grab all the emails, and they grab all the new knowledge about the clients or prospects that you're looking at, or whatever the deal is. And it puts together this whole amazing report based on your company's value propositions and where you are in the market, your competitive positioning, and the jargon, all this stuff. And it comes back in the morning at 9 a.m. It delivers it to your company. And it's like, here's the next 5 weeks of what you should do. I did it while you were sleeping, right? The agent's going to do it continuously. If you have bad data, it won't matter. The company's going to look at it and go, that's not helpful. That's not what we want. That's not even based on our value prop. And my answer to that would be like, that's probably because it didn't have the right data from your company and all the humanness of the value props and your strategy and all those kind of things and your competitive positioning to do an accurate job for you. But these are things any company can do today. They can put these documents in place today. They can clean up their house today. They can lay a solid foundation today. Mm-hmm. And these agents can build off of that data tomorrow. But rocky foundation will never, ever make a skyscraper. It will always fall down.
And the agent does it sort of by giving itself instructions. My automation peeps know this stuff is possible now. It's just a series of Legos that you put together to get that report sent to you.
So I always draw a blank when I think about the companies that I've been involved with, and what you would do to get your data in order. How do you mechanically go through the process of saying this piece of data is corrupt, get it out of here. This piece of data is good, but needs this added to it. That seems an impossible human task. So just making the data accessible, I think, is sufficient. But I don't know. We say this, Brian, but I think we should do a whole show on what are you really talking about when you say get your data in order.
Yeah, no, okay. I know. I know you need to push back on me a little bit on that, Andy. I think I want to very quickly, but I don't want to get off this topic. And also love to hear from Jyunmi before we wrap up today. He's been super slow. But he is here. For anybody just listening to this, Jyunmi has been here the whole time. We're looking at him. But yes, I think just generally speaking, but I would love to have a whole conversation about this, because it would be cool to talk about, like, back to what Carl said. How do you best prepare? Here you go. Here's a show topic, right? How do you best prepare your business for GPT-5 and beyond? Right. And I think we could definitely have a really good conversation about it in talking about that. What is what data? What are we talking about? I think there's a lot more to that, but we'll leave that for another topic because I think it's a great conversation. Jyunmi, I'd love to get your topics and maybe as we sort of wrap up, and then also if you or somebody else wants to bring in some of these comments as well, because we've had a lot of comments and I love it. Thank you so much, everybody, for commenting.
Yeah. Well, the topic that I was gonna to cover it's a slight pivot from what we've been talking about, which has been a fantastic conversation. By the way, I've been enjoying everything, but it covers HCI and BCI. Particularly, Carl put us on to a story or an update.
Will you define your terms?
Yeah.
Oh, human computer interface, brain computer interface. We had a show last week, I think it was, about this, and Carl gave us an update to the story that he found where they were demonstrating the person who had gotten Neuralink implanted in their head and how they can control their computer. And describing how they developed the control. And I think that was the most interesting to me, was that they were using their imagination. They were imagining, they got better results imagining what it would look like, visualizing. And this is something, if you've ever done anything to in the creative world or meditative world, visualization is a key point there. And he was describing the method that he was using, his imagination, and he got better results when moving the mouse cursor, selecting what he wanted to select, and the response time was incredible. And this was essentially a live feed from from the camera of who he was working with, and
just a live
yeah, exactly, and it was amazing.
I love what he said, Jyunmi. He said, "What did he say?" Because I know you're more a big Star Wars fan, based on your background. But he said, I don't hope I don't get this wrong, but he said it's like using the force push or something like that.
Yeah, force, yeah,
exactly. Force. I was like, that's going to make a lot of people happy, but that's coming from the world's first person with what they say, telepathy, basically.
Right.
Imagine
telekinetic. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, telekinesis, I guess, maybe.
Yeah. And so what I found really interesting is when you guys were talking about the agents and how reasoning will be, more developed, and how you want to develop your prompts. This is all communication with the AI. This is all communication. This is on a macro scale, your interface with the computer, right? So it gave me thoughts about, well, what will happen when we start communicating beyond just via the keyboard? How quickly can we communicate with an AI? How fast is an AI? What happens when our brains can speak at full speed with the AI? What can we accomplish at that point? And what are we going to see technologically advancements along those lines? And is there, I'm sure there's going to be hurdles, but does that provide a certain solution or a certain service that we don't see today? And so I think all of that just comes down to a larger conversation on communication. And, we've got the stories about translation and all of these kinds of things. Could we see from Neuralink and our AI translators live translation? And if it's in our head, can we hear it in our own voice or in our own language? So, sorry, just your conversation just started me down this chain, and I was just like, oh, there's this component. We have it now. We have translation. We have AI, and we have a direct brain interface. So, how long until we're, jacking into the net via Wi-Fi and doing virtual tourism, like from another store? And we can be we can be anywhere in the world. It'll look exactly like the place, and it'll be directly in our brain. So it's how our brain interprets imagery. So I'm just saying,
wow.
Are we
Jyunmi,
circle back and circle forward?
Johnny Mnemonic. You
exactly.
remember?
Exactly.
Johnny Mnemonic. I don't know if anyone remembers that, but that's what immediately I thought. I was like, wait a minute. That whole that was crazy. And I actually, there was a couple questions here from Leah. So what film do you think best captures our future with AI? And then how will chips impact our physio? I don't know if you, I don't know, Jimmy, if you want to capture
these are shows. These are not
right. All of these. Yeah, exactly. Let's film that best captures our future with AI. All right. It depends on how far along. All right. So number one, I'd say the genre is cyberpunk. All right. There are classics like Blade Runner, but Blade Runner is about 150 years out just because they have space travel and they have full androids and stuff like that. So I say 100, 150 years out for that. But if you want something a little closer, maybe 20 years out, 30 years out is probably Ghost in the Shell. That's a dark one. So just to let you know about that. Johnny Mnemonic is probably a lot closer than you think. Probably 10 years out in some form. Not as fancy as Johnny Mnemonic is, but that's a great example of probably what you're going to see in about 10 years. You're going to have people who are going to use their brain interface to perform greater interconnections with information, data, and processing. You may use your brain to store special courier information. We had a show about that kind of stuff before as well. What if, Dropbox builds out Neuralink to give you secure storage? Because if it's in your brain, it's not in anybody else's. But again, we got show topics. I could talk about it forever.
I was going to say, that's a topic, Jyunmi, I know you can dive into. I'm going to throw a wild card out there and see it's Idiocracy is the movie of the future.
I don't know. I'd rather have a dark feature than Idiocracy.
Okay, listen, we had a lot of good comments today. I'm sorry, we're running out of time to get to all of them, but thank you to Greg. He was talking about prompting. He's like, look, it's just really, requirement gathering. It's still the core of all results. That's when we're talking about it. And was talking about how she's excited about, we were talking about Gemini. She also thinks it would be a great topic for get ready for business for chat, getting your business ready for ChatGPT 5. 1,000% agree. That's a topic we can definitely do. She was saying yes to Andy, but I maybe on the pushback on the data part, I'm not sure on that one. I do want to bring this one up from Jen really quick because this is on the Neuralink. She said Neuralink is fascinating me from the perspective of having a twin who is nonverbal. I want to know more about what state the brain has to start in order for this to be effective. It's exciting. Yeah, Jen, I would imagine, anybody that's currently living in any type of situation where they feel like it might have a direct play, I think it's got to be super exciting. Thank you for sharing that. And then Leah, thank you for your comments as well. Okay, so that's it. We're going to wrap it up. This is always a fun show. Thank you, Beth, for this suggestion a month or two ago at this point. But it's a great way to just bring back up a whole lot of fun topics and just kind of dive into the things that made us pique our interest. I think about this stuff all the time, and I know the rest of you guys do too. So thank you to all our commenters today. God, we had so many today. So awesome to see. We appreciate you very much. And yeah, I had some topics prepped for next week, but it sounds like I'm going to be doing some editing and some additions. So stay tuned for all the topics coming next week. But whatever it is, it'll be fun. So come back and see us, guys. We will see you next week. Till then, have a great Friday.
Aloha.